Hi there, this is Katie Groves. I have a migraine right now, so I'm doing this in the mostly dark. But I've been doing that a lot anyway. I am reflecting on torture, what it means to be a torture survivor, what it does to you, and the kind of person it has made me. I've undergone continuous torture my entire life. And that's not an exaggeration. I'm a survivor of Monarch MK Ultra, which means that I have experienced non-stop torture since my programming began at conception. And I continue to experience non-stop torture as I still have some programs intact. I don't know if I have any programs that have not been contained, altered in some way so as to keep us safe and protected from reaccessing, but I do have alters that are still continuously experiencing torture. So I have experienced torture every moment of every day of my entire life, and I'm experiencing it right now. What does that mean to me? Well, it's hell, it's horror. It's the worst fathomable pain. Technically is what torture is. It's extreme, hideous pain, and defining torture can be hard. I remember a conversation I had with somebody a couple years ago, partway into my deprogramming process, when I truly realized that not everyone has experienced torture or understands what it is. This person themselves could have been a Monarch slave, and so they may have just been dissociating. But I haven't explored my memories with them enough to know they haven't been in my life for a while. But I was talking to this particular person, and we were talking about the pain scales that doctors will ask you, nurses will ask you about. Like if you go to the hospital and they ask you how bad your pain is, and they ask you to rate it 1 to 10, and I think this is what we were talking about. I was talking about how much I didn't like those scales, because as a torture survivor, there are no numbers, there's no quantifying pain. Anything below torture to me is virtually nothing. It's extremely hard to chart. At a certain level of pain, I dissociate, and then there's no gauge for how bad it is. And if I was in the hospital and able to talk about it, wasn't dissociating too heavily, and was actually conscious of my experience, I wouldn't be able to tell you what I was really experiencing if it was really, really bad. So we were talking about this, and I told her what I considered to be a 6 on the pain scale. And a 6 is where I gauged the beginning of torture. In this dissociative part I was speaking from. Different part than the part that just said everything I just said. So I just realized that may sound inconsistent because I just switched. But at the time I was talking from an alter in that moment who considered anything above a 6 to be torture, for the purposes of that pain scale and communicating with doctors. And they defined a 6 as being in so much pain that you cannot conceive of the pain you're feeling, that your mind snaps, your mind breaks, you leave your body, and you cannot conceive of what you're experiencing. There is no conception to an end. You can't believe that you are going to survive. Every moment is agony. It is so slow. It's so drawn out. And you just keep tripping on it, wide-eyed. I don't understand how I'm going to live to see the end of this pain. And while I don't think my friend meant to be dismissive at the time, she said, without seeming to understand what I'd said, "Oh, I've never experienced anything like that." And the lack of conception she had for that experience, it wasn't callous, she wasn't trying to be cold, she just literally could not conceive of what I'd experienced, of what torture was. And it was so bizarre to me to hear someone say that, because I was so new out of Monarch, and everyone I knew had been tortured up to that point. And like I said, she herself may have been Monarched and may have been dissociating, but I do remember the total lack of understanding she appeared to have. So, yeah, that kind of pain that breaks you, the kind of agony that is so drawn out, so slow, and it's so inconceivable to you that you can survive. That to me is torture. Different people experience it different ways, I'm sure, but that's what it means to me. And it's not that what I call torture would necessarily be the minimum amount of pain someone else would consider to be torture, because as a long-term torture survivor, that moment when I break, it's probably worse than what would break most people. Simply because I've been trained. I've been trained to withstand it. I have a really hard time reflecting on it and thinking about it without going into the pain, without going into the flashbacks. I think another thing that it means to me to be a torture survivor is to understand your own vulnerability. If you have broken, if you have been shattered, if your own spirit has been raped and broken by pain, specifically pain inflicted upon you by another, but not necessarily, then you know your limitations. You know that point at which you break. You know that point at which you see your own humanness shattering all around you. And in a sense, you know who you are. Do not mistake me. Understand that I am not advocating for torture as a means to spiritual growth. However, I believe that torture can have certain positive effects on people who do the right things with it. And by that I mean it can have positive effects if someone takes the experience they have and transforms it in a way that leads to spiritual understanding. If you stay mindful and present during it, you may come to deepen your sense of empathy. This can also apply if you dissociated but are able to recover the memories and integrate them into your psyche. So it's not so much that torture has positive effects, it's that you can do things with it that are transformative. But I'm never going to advocate for someone going out and having this life experience by choice. It's almost like you pay the price for empathy with your suffering. Those who've been tortured have paid the price for whatever positive spiritual benefits they get from it. I myself, though, before I was able to transform the agony of my torture, was dying in drug addiction. I'm not naive as to what it does most of the time. Most of the time, it seems to lead people to their own horrific, self-destructive death if they are not themselves killed by whoever or whatever inflicted it. But to those who can transform their pain, there's a gift. You can take it if you're willing to work for it and if you are capable. If you are not so broken that you cannot either lift yourself up or surrender to something that will do it for you.